Some days you just have to fly solo, and that is what I am doing today for this week's FroKnowsPhoto RAWtalk. And there's a lot of questions that came in this week. I put out there on Facebook for you guys to send in questions, and a lot of you guys sent in some really, really good ones. And I was putting together what I was going to talk about during this show, and a lot of the things that are on my list ended up coming up in the questions that you guys asked on Facebook, because I opened it up to everybody. I was like, what questions do you have? And there's lots of good ones in there. So we're going to go through those, hopefully for the next hour, and do a lot of Q&A type things. They're going to spawn off and, probably send my head into different directions, and maybe something will work me up and get me... What was that? Something in my nose. Anyway, maybe something will, get me a little worked up and out there and get a little bit passionate about something we're going to talk about. But one thing that I wrote that I wanted to talk about was this D5200 thing. A lot of you guys saw the video that I made there, and some people took what I said to heart when I said things like the D5100 and the D7000 are dead cameras. It was taken... can I say out of context? Ari's not here to tell me if that's the right use of everything, but I think a lot of it was taken out of context. The point I was trying to make with the D5200, one, I was a little perturbed that I wasn't notified by Nikon about it, but then I found out that nobody in the United States press was notified because it wasn't coming out in the United States. It's one of those things where it's the first time that I can remember something is not being released here, at least at the same time it's being released around the world in terms of a camera. Now, I know a lot of people in Europe are used to this, or in Australia, they don't get the camera as soon as it comes out. They have to wait longer than everybody else. But in this case, it made no sense why Nikon would announce a camera for Europe or Japan and say, well, we're not going to put it out in the US yet. And that led me off onto talking about why I think the D5100 is dead and why I think the D7000 is a DOA camera. And I'm not saying that those cameras are bad by any stretch of the imagination. And this is going to lead us into another topic that I want to hit before we get to questions and answers. But the 5100 and who's going to buy a 5100 knowing that right around the corner is a D5200? Now, yes, I am not saying that you should go out there and buy every new piece of gear that comes out. My 5-year plan states, which I should probably restate a 5-year plan and make it and pin it to the wall somewhere for everybody and just say, look, it's not always about upgrading gear, but lenses are really important, and we're going to get into that soon. But really, the D5100 is a perfectly fine camera, and I found out this week that Adorama is selling the D5100 refurb from Nikon. I'm trying to get Nikon to sell Allen's refurbs. If Allen could get refurbs from Nikon, it would be unbelievable because they sell lenses, they sell bodies, and they're cheap. D5100 refurb, $349.99. Or is it $379? Where are my notes? No, it's $349.99 for a D5100. This camera has the same sensor as the D7000. That is a steal of a camera for $349. So no, I'm not telling people not to buy a D5100 or that it's done and dead and never going to come back. Any camera can take great pictures. And with that said, I broke out the D70 that I bought for Ari a long time ago. I think I spent $300. I gave it to him as a gift. Well, I borrowed it back. It has a 51.8 on it, the old one. And I'm going to start using this thing. It's got a 1.8-inch screen on the back, and it's still a kick-ass camera. It's 6.1 megapixels. And I get asked all the time, and I know I'm going on side tangents, so why don't I get back to my D7000 thing? The reason I'm saying that the D7000 is DOA is because it's ready to go away. So why would I buy that thing new, knowing that something is right around the corner? Now, that if you're looking to just get into photography, the answer is get into photography. Buy something. Get anything and start to learn. And this is where we're going to lead into the next part of what I want to talk about. And, just because I said DOA just means that it's been a while. It's time for a new one. It could be on its last legs. But it's still a very good camera for anybody shooting. Now, I get asked all the time, Jared, I want to buy a good camera that's going to take good pictures. I want to make big-ass prints. What camera will help me make big-ass prints? And the answer is none. No camera is going to make you make help you make big ass prints. And the answer to what camera should you buy? The answer is any camera. I don't care what it is. Point and shoot, iPhone, D5100, Canon T1i, Canon Rebel XT from back in the day. Just pick up a camera and start to learn what you're doing. I always say put on good glass. Good glass doesn't have to be expensive. Excuse me as I cough. I have gotten better. I'm no longer sick. But, getting asked the thing of like, what camera will help me get great pictures? No camera is going to help you get great pictures. What's going to help you get great pictures is understanding photography, learning the basics, maybe not first. Maybe you start in auto, but whatever. I have the FroKnowsPhoto beginner guide to getting out of auto for those people that want to jumpstart that and get into, how you get out of auto. But the key is shooting and learning from what you're doing and knowing that no camera is going to make you get better pictures. Well, yeah, some cameras will make you get better pictures, but if you know what you're doing, you can take a D70 or a D3000 and get great pictures with it no matter what. Or somebody could have a D4, all the greatest lenses in the world, and still not shoot their way out of a paper bag. It's the truth in anything. If you don't know what you're doing, you'll get lucky sometimes, but you're not going to get the greatest pictures ever. I can take a D3000, I can take a D70, and outshoot anybody if I gave them my D4. One, they may have trouble using the D4, and two, they may not know what they're doing. So it comes down to understanding photography. If you understand light, you start to study this stuff. You know what happens with your aperture, your exposure triangle. I know it sounds basic, but to me, photography comes down to the basics. Know what you're doing, keep shooting, learn from your mistakes, and you're going to start to understand cause and effect and what's going to happen next and what I need to do now to make better pictures. So it comes down to education. That's how you get better pictures. And anytime anybody says, you have a great, that's a great camera, it must take great pictures. You go, no, I take great pictures. You don't go to a chef and go, you must have the best oven in the world because you baked a great cake. It's not the oven. Sure, it helps. Sure, I use a D4. It's the best tool for the job. But a combination of, shooting since I was 13, knowing what I'm doing, and putting the best gear in my hands because that's what I choose to use, it gives me a leg up. One, the best gear I like using it. I've always done this. I've always personally invested up in gear, whether it was waiting till the D2H came out and having one of the first ones that came out, and that was my first digital SLR, to dumping that and getting a D2X, then a D2XS when the price dropped and people were trading them in, to being on the first, literally getting one of the first cameras of the D3 because I knew how amazing that camera was. I would still be using a D3 today if the D3S didn't come out. And if the D3S didn't, get replaced by the D4, I'd still be using it today. But my mentality when it comes to gear, especially bodies, is for me as a profession. I get paid to do this, so I can afford to get the new gear, but I do it smartly. I dump my cameras as soon as the new one is announced. Why? Because I know that a year, 6 months, a year and a half after the new camera comes out, if I still have the old one, it drops $500. It drops $1,000 in value. So where I could get $4,500 out of my D3S at some point and put that right into a D4, if I waited till now, my D3S may be only worth $3,500, another $1,000 off. So for me to upgrade to a D4 for the difference from $6,000 to $4,500, for $1,500, it's a no-brainer. I can get $1,500 and get a D4, and I'll be happy with this camera for 2 more years, or until they replace it, and I'd have to decide, do I want what the next one does? I'm drinking water for you guys out there. Hold on. So that's just smart thinking, and to bring it all back, D5200, by the way, I'm looking at it scrolling across my screen right now. That is an ugly camera in the fact that they have it in this ruby red, then they have it in this copper crap color, and it's just like, come on. Anyway, cameras. They're not going to get you better pictures. You are going to get yourself better pictures when you understand composition, framing, the exposures, and what you're doing. You're going to get a feel for what you're doing. So that's it. done with that little ranty McRanterson and explaining myself why I said the D7000's DOA and why I said the D5100's DOA. But look, if you can buy a used camera and you're just getting started, or you buy a refurbed camera and you're just getting started, awesome. I don't care. Take that 5100, take that 5000, take that 7000, take whatever camera you pick up and learn the hell out of it. Put some good glass on it, and good glass can be under $200, like a 35 1.8, which is around $200, or on Canon's side, the 50-1.8. Just put some glass on your cameras and don't complain. You know, here's another thing. People are like, how many megapixels do I need to make big-ass prints? 4? It doesn't matter. I had a D2H and I made big-ass prints from that because I put quality glass on it. But big-ass prints come from quality exposures. If you get a great exposure with your iPhone in broad daylight, you could blow that up to be a big-ass print. Or if you shoot that in the lowest light situation and nothing's really good, you're not going to get a great big-ass print. Comes down to a lot of common sense in my mind. And I'm ranting, but I'll get to the questions and answers soon. But yeah, if Allen's could ever get refurb gear, refurb lenses, refurb bodies, they already get them from Canon. I mean, Jesus, when Canon sends refurb glass, there's a whole list that comes in. I mean, they send 70 to 200 2.8 VRs refurbed. You're saving $500-600 on this stuff. Damn, I should pick it up myself on the Canon side. I could literally pick up refurb gear. They'll even send refurb 5D Mark IIIs at this point. And so you save $500 picking it up. You don't have that year warranty. You got that 90-day warranty. But hey, if something goes wrong with a camera, it's going to go wrong in the beginning. It's not really going to go wrong totally in the end. And if it does, you send it back. They get fixed. Oh, well, you take that risk. But I love the refurb gear, especially glass. Glass is glass. If it's not scratched, you don't have a problem with it. So, moving on. What else could we talk about here? I like this flying solo thing. I mean, it's harder. It's harder to fly solo because you just have to keep talking. And I do like talking. Everybody knows this. But I think I scripted it out pretty well. And the questions are really going to send me off in great directions. Don't forget, guys, you know, please check out allenscamera.com. They support me from day one. If it wasn't for Allen, I don't think I would have made it this far and been able to sustain myself building a site and paying for what I needed to pay for if Allen wasn't there for me. So now I'm just paying it back, helping him out. allenscamera.com in the United States. Let's see, misinformation. I've got myths, you know, better cameras, better pictures, more megapixels. All of those myths are shot. It comes down to knowing what you're doing. So I don't want to go back into that. But buying quality, still a great thing. Let's get into some of these questions, and I'll just go right to the top of the list that you guys had in. Excuse me as I drink some water. So we got a question here from Facebook from Brad Karma. And it's a long question, so it may be multiple parts. I would love to hear your opinions, which I've come to respect quite a bit, on whether or not one should have full-frame camera to be working photography jobs. I own a D7000 and I'm trying to get real estate gigs on the side. Sometimes I wonder if bringing enough, in quotes, camera to the table to give my would-be clients the level of quality I want to deliver. I love my 7000, but it's an ethical question that I sometimes ponder. It would be quite a stretch for me to get into something like a D7000, especially in this economy. I focused most of my extra photography funds on glass. And he says he loves the podcast, so on and so forth. And he says, keep up the good work. And he listens to it going to work. So this is a good question. And it's something that we face every day. And before I jump into this question, it brought up something in my mind to think about. And that's like when you go to a corporate gig or you do a gig and somebody walks up to you and goes, oh, my daughter, my 12-year-old has that same camera. I love that camera. And, 9 times out of 10, they don't know what camera you're using. They don't have a D4. Or maybe they do because their dad is like a multi-billionaire or millionaire. But the point is, I don't know what the point is. The point is, I liked having the best gear to show people. The reason I bought that D2H back in the day was because I didn't want to have a D200 or whatever was out back at the time, a D100. It's something that everybody else had. I didn't want to have the same camera that everybody had. I wanted to set myself apart, and I've done that with a lot of things. But this is a good question. You own a D7000. I think you answer it yourself. I think when you say here that a D700 would be a stretch in this economy, and the fact that you've focused a lot of your extra photography funds on glass, well, you've done the right thing. And I think the answer right here is no. I don't think you need, it doesn't matter what camera you have. It doesn't define the quality of work you put out. And what you said here is that you have quality glass. Quality glass is going to make all of the difference in the world. And I've shown this by using the D3000 shooting a concert. That thing maxed out at 1600 ISO, yet I put on the Hebrew Trinity and still got great pictures that people sit here and go, oh, but you used good glass. Well, gee, it's funny how that works. It's funny how when you put quality glass on a beginner basic body, you could do something great with it. If somebody has a D4 and they put on a shitty piece of glass, like an 18-200 or something like that, you're not going to get the same quality as I'm going to get if I put on something better. So ethically speaking, it is one of those tough things today when everybody has the ability to have the same camera that you have. But if they're hiring you for the quality of work that you put out there, not the camera you bring to the table. You go to the house to shoot it. Most of the time, they're not going to be there bothering you because I would tell them to leave me alone. Let me shoot the house. Go away. You like what I do. So you can shoot the pictures with whatever you have. And saying that you have great glass is the right mentality in my mind. Coming up with that, just, knowing you're shooting indoors. If you have a 14 millimeter indoors, or you've got the 12-24 or the Nikon 10-24, you're going to get great, fantastic interior shots. You can get tremendous pictures with any camera for real estate photography, because most of the time, excuse me, as a thing bubbles in my nose. Hold on. Most of the time that you're shooting in real estate, you're on a tripod. So even a D3000 is going to kick ass at 100 ISO or whatever the ISO goes to with good glass on it. So your ethical question is, don't worry about it. You already have good glass. So when you're ready to jump into the full frame market, when you get that big job that requires some extra nighttime photography or low light stuff handheld, you jump into a D600 if you can. You jump into a D700 if you find one at a good price used. It's getting tougher now. That price is down to $1,500 or between $1,500 and $1,800, and you've got to decide, do you want a D600 or a D700, one that does video versus one that is more pro-built? I mean, at this point, I probably would jump into a D600, which I actually have right here. It's a substantial body, and I'm very happy with the camera. I have to send it back to Nikon unhappily. I'll send it back to them, but you just do what you need to do when it's time. But don't let the body that you have, the D7000, hold you back. You haven't held it back. You're getting jobs. You have good glass. You have the right mentality, Brad. And I don't think if somebody's asking what camera you're using, unless they're a professional photographer, it doesn't matter what you use. They're buying you. Well, they're paying you for the quality of work that you put out there. So good question, and everybody should keep this in mind. Look, invest in glass. I don't care if you have that D3000. I don't care if you have that Rebel T1i. I know that Kilkenny Cat Ryan Connors has a T1i or something, but constantly produces unbelievably amazing quality pieces of work. She puts on a 51.4. She knows that spending that $400 or $500, a little less than $500, $450 or so, for a 51.4 is going to give her quality images. That's the key. Glass, 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 Mick Glass. Mick Glass. All right, let's go down the list here. John Mason, auto white balance, ? Why or why not? The answer is yes. Always. Auto white balance. Well, not always. Now that I said always, not always. 99.9% of the time, I am in auto white balance. The reason, if you're shooting RAW, one less thing to worry about is white balance. You can get, and this is not flash. If you're shooting with flash, then you can custom set your white balance to whatever color your lights are, because it's going to be consistent every time you take the picture. So that way you don't have to worry about changing it or syncing it in the computer later, which you could do. And you could also get one of those gray Macbeth cards or red blah 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 Macbeth cards, whoever they are. It's the color swatches. And if you're doing studio work, that's where you set your white balance, because the white balance isn't going to change once you set it once. It's going to be even across every shot because the lights are the same. So that's the situation that you change your white balance and set it to auto, or not auto, to custom. But auto white balance, I use it for everything. Again, I can't say everything. I just contradicted myself. Not everything, but a concert. I use auto white balance because the lights are changing too much. Plus, it's so easy to tweak it in Lightroom and in your RAW file. So it's one less thing to worry about in the camera. I'm all about less things you need to change in the camera. Like people say, why do you shoot manual? And why didn't you drop your... A good question here, not right here, but somebody asked me, I was reading this for the questions or podcast at FroKnowsPhoto.com, wherever the questions were sent in. And she goes that recently at the Made in America Fest, or whatever they called it with Jay-Z, you took a picture at the top of the art museum stairs with 250 ISO at 1/5000th of a second. Why didn't you drop it to 100 ISO and then, you would have been at like 2500th of a second, thus getting the best quality? Honestly, the difference between 100 ISO in bright daylight and 250 ISO is nothing. Plus, I set it to 250 because I don't know, that's where I set it. Sometimes I just arbitrarily do that, but then I focus in on just changing my shutter speed. That's the easiest thing for me to change. I lock my aperture where I want it. I change my shutter speed with my back finger because that's the easiest tweak I can make. And I can do that during concerts. It's the first thing I go to when it comes to making changes at concerts. I tweak, the first thing first is shutter speed. If I run out of shutter, meaning I get it too slow and the subject's running around, then the next thing I know I need to do is either open up to let more light in or make that ISO change higher to give me more shutter speed. It becomes that whole cause and effect thing. Maybe I should get into some advanced teachings and just spit all the knowledge out of what goes on in my mind, all the math and stuff. And I'm not good at math, but it's pretty simple math. If light changes, it gets darker. Well, I need to let more light in. Simple stuff like that. Water break. Ah, yes. Flying solo means I have to talk the whole time. All right, John, thank you for that question. And we got Dustin Gwynn. When you shot film, what were some of your favorite films, forgot the S, and why? Good question for those of you who shoot film or anybody who has ever shot film. So there was weddings. There were I used to bring multiple films out to weddings. And you had to bring multiple films with you. Why? Because you needed different film speed. You needed different... Well, you could take black and white versus color. Some film gave you more contrast. Some was more neutral. And then you had your low light film, like Fuji 800 press. I used to buy Fuji 800 press by the brick. I would order this stuff in. It was like $3. I don't know. I was spending $80 a brick, 20 rolls. What is this? Divided. Let me get out my calculator for simple math here. What's it? $4 a roll is, let's see, 80 divided by 20 is $4 a roll. Math win right here, everybody. Give me the math spelling bee award because I got my math right in my head. What up? That's right. I'm excited. Anyway, so I used to get that stuff. Sometimes I got it for $3.80 a roll, but it smelled really good too when you would open up the film canister. I think you should just, if you've never had film, go to wherever they sell film at wherever, open up a film canister and just sniff it. Give it a lovely sniff because the chemical smell of film is awesome. I love it. And I think you should do it. So, when I went and shot film, Fuji 800 press was always in my refrigerator. Yep, I used to keep it in the fridge, take it out before I went to the Flyers games to go shoot or use it indoors. It was one of those things that you had to use indoors. You needed more exposure, so you had to, you needed more light, so you used Fuji 800. Sometimes we pushed it to 1600 because it had a one-stop latitude. Not as much as we have with a RAW file, but more than what you had. You have pretty much a 1 to 3 stop latitude, depending on what you're shooting and how you're shooting. And there was a thing you could push your film and pull your film. God, there's a whole discussion needed just for pushing and pulling your film. So pushing your film real quick, if you shot at 800, if you had an 800 speed film and you needed more out of it, you pushed it to say 3200, 2 full stops, you would tell the person at the lab, I pushed it 2 stops, and they would process it as if you shot it at 3200 ISO. But what would happen is you'd introduce more grain, just so many different variables happened when you started pushing and pulling your film. It made for issues. So that's why you kind of, have multiple rolls. So I had Fuji 800 for color. I would have, what did I shoot for black and white? You had Ilford HP5. You had Tri-X. You had T-Max. I think I shot Tri-X more than T-Max. I think that the T-Max had a nice grain at 400, but I think the Tri-X gave me punchier black and whites when processed. And the whole thing with black and white, the longer you cook it, I used to cook my film. Let me take a swig of water again. What do I mean by cook my film? You know, it's funny, with black and white and processing yourself, the hotter the temperature, the quicker the film would process. The quicker it would process because the hotter it was, the more grain you introduced. Just so many issues and variables can happen with the temperature. If you process too fast. But I used to cook my film, meaning I used to let it, not heat it, but I used to let it stay in longer. I would over-process it. I would over-develop it because that gave me a thicker negative. It gave me more depth and more contrast and just more tonals, more difference between white and black and gradient. What do they call this? Gradients? Dynamic range. I don't know. I went with the blacks and the whites. I liked both. I'm equal opportunity like that. And then when it came to color, Fuji had NPC and NPH. I think NPC was the contrastier one, and NPH was the more muted one, so a lot of wedding photographers like the NPH because it didn't have the saturated colors that made the skin tones different. But then, get this, Kodak had VC. They had VC and NC. Neutral contrast, I think, was NC, and they had 160 speed, and then they had 400. I used to get the 400. We used to take 160 with us for outdoor shooting, and then we'd switch to 400 or stuff like that for other parts of the day. But I used to use 400 VC. You didn't really want to use 400 VC for portraits of people and indoor shooting. For portraits, we used the NC or the NPH because it was more neutral. But I loved contrast even back then. I loved vibrance and saturation. And that film, was it VC? Vibrant contrast, as Kodak called it. The VC film. It came in a yellow box with a purple stripe, and it said VC on it. Came in a brick of 5. They used to come out of the refrigerator because Pro Film stayed better in the refrigerator. Anyway, I love that film. It gave me this just such saturation, and you couldn't tweak you can't get that saturation after the fact as much as you could when you shot, when you shoot RAW right now. So, that's my feeling with that. I mean, I used all different types of film, but those are the films that I personally liked. And you had to pick films back in the day based off of what you were shooting. You can't just change your ISO from one picture to the next like we do now. We have it easy. We had 36 shots. You had to think, am I going to overshoot? Am I going to undershoot? Did I shoot 7 pictures and now I want to get 800 speed film? And then you want to kill that roll, which cost you money. Everything cost you money. You had to be cognizant. Every picture cost you it didn't cost you $1, but it cost you money. If you only shot half a roll of film and you burn the rest, meaning you waste it, you just wasted half that roll of film, but sometimes you had to do it. So that's a good question. I didn't think I'd talk that long on what films I used, but, films are great. I think you guys should shoot it and see what it's like. And then Dustin had a second question, and that's why I picked it. I would like to know your take on over-editing photos. I seem to do this sometimes, working the image too much. What is your approach to editing in Lightroom? What do you adjust first, second, third, and why? All right, I don't think there is a right or wrong way to edit your files. Now, I get into my own personal workflow where I like to tweak between contrast first or exposure. Now, my exposures are pretty close most of the time, within a quarter of a stop to a half of a stop, but sometimes I'm off and I got to bring it back a whole stop, but that happens. So I do that first, then I do a combination of the contrast and then my black levels, and then sometimes at the end of editing, you kind of do your white balance. And not even at the end. That could be at any point. I don't think there is a right or wrong way. But at the end is when you do your sharpening. Adding your sharpening at the end is what you do. You do that based off of how the image ends up turning out. But when it comes to over-editing, if you're sitting there and you're tweaking every little thing and you're overdoing it, just at some point you got to stop. So here's my workflow for editing. I bring the files into the computer. I rename them for the date. So today would be 12/11/11 underscore assignment underscore no underscore, because nothing after that. And then it would be the dot would be there, and then it would be like 001 if I had under 1,000 pictures, or if I had more, it'd be 00 0.0001 if I had more than 1,000 pictures. Then I go in, I star the ones that I like, then I edit the starred ones. That's how I go through it, and I tweak them, and then I come back to it later, and I go, oh, maybe I could do this, add more contrast. Do it at different parts of the day, you know. After you shoot, come back to it, edit it later, come back to it, and go, okay, I think I like this, and then go through the ones that you didn't star, just in case you see a keeper that you didn't see when you were first processing them. But if you look at your image and you go, I'm done too much to it, it looks fake. If it doesn't look real, then you've done too much to it. So, but then you got like Juan Patino from New York, good guy, who does a lot of post-processing. It becomes your style. If your thing is spending 8 hours on one image and that gives you the result you're looking for like a composite or just something that's really, really cool, then by all means, just go with it. That's your style. There's no right or wrong way, but just don't overdo it. If you think you're overdoing it, you're probably gone too far. You may want to pull back. Okay, we got Maddie Wookie Simpson. Yes, it says Maddie, Mattyy, Wookie, Wookiee, Simpson. Event photography question. How do you carry your lenses and change them? You've mentioned you used a single body when working, but how do you carry lenses and change them quickly and safely whilst photographing bands in a busy and dark environment? I know Think Tank have lens cases for a belt system, but is it worth the money, or do you just have a specific bag that you like to use? So very good question here. If I had two bodies, it would be easier. But again, that the expense that comes with having two of the best bodies, I wanted two D4s, do I want to spend 12 grand and literally lose 6 grand in 2 years? No. So I shoot with the one body when I can, which is most of the time. And sorry, I tapped the microphone. Sorry, microphone. And so in the pit, I'll put the camera bag down, open with my lenses standing at attention, lens caps off, lens hoods on, ready for me to change. I anticipate what I'm going to shoot. When I need to make a quick change, I do it calmly. I've learned that if you try to rush through changing your lenses, especially in the dark, you may damage your camera or do something wrong or just fidget too much. So I have a plan. I go into shooting and go, I'm going to start with this lens, and then I anticipate what I want to do next, and I change lenses quickly but confidently in the dark. I have a flashlight on my belt, on my lanyard, and I use that. So I change lenses. I literally just do it. I leave the camera bag on the ground. I don't like belt systems myself. I have the Think Tank belt system. I honestly still haven't taken it out of the box when they sent it to me. I need to try it, but I'm not a fan of having all this gear on my waist and on my hips and interfering with my equilibrium and messing up my center of gravity and giving me something else to worry about when I'm bumping into something. I don't want to bump into people in the pit, and I don't want a 70 to 200 off the side of my hip pulling my pants down, unless it's Anyway, I don't want it pulling my pants down, so I'm sipping water. And, so I don't, there's really some people like having that belt system. Sometimes I think a belt system would come in handy, like on a sideline of a football game, if you don't have anywhere to put your stuff down and you don't want to get trampled on. But I also know if I need to move, I don't want to impede my movement in any way. I really like to shoot from low angles. I like to get down to the ground, not laying on the ground. I can't stand when people, I've seen it at the photo walks, and and I called Adam out on this the other week, is laying on the ground at that weird angle where you're like laying on your back, leaning sideways, crouching your elbows together, and it just doesn't look straight. And you know what people mess up when they do that? They mess up their lines, and then they have to edit in the computer to get their lines straighter. Just get down on your knees. Get down on your stomach. It's much easier to take a level picture on your stomach than it is on your back, laying sideways and looking up. I mean, I'm not used to laying on my back for stuff like that. And, so what do you use? What can you use? You can use a belt system. You can use a fanny pack. But I put my bag on the ground and I change out of it. Now I've got that airport navigator, which I haven't attempted to use yet. Just another thing to roll around, pick the lens you want. It's even tougher. I used to keep the camera bag over my shoulder. One, that messes with your shoulders. One's going to be higher than the other. The weight and balance may be off. And there's really no need to have it on my shoulder when I'm going to change lenses. It's just easier to be on my knees, crouching down, changing lenses out of the bag. So yeah, it's not an easy thing to do, but a lot of people do like the belt systems. But really, how often do you need to change the lenses? Are you going to change 80 lenses in like 12 minutes that you need to have every lens on your hip and ready to go? I have my bag with me. If I need to make the quick change, I need to make the quick change. If I miss something, I end up missing it. Sure, I'd like to have 2 bodies, but I don't. Justin Thompson asks, when is it time to get a new body? Good question again. Excuse me, hold on. Don't watch this. That's right, phlegm. You spit it, it happens. It's better than swallowing, remember that. So, when is it time to get a new body? It's a good question, and I think it goes up to the top of the first question we had about the D7000. The time to get a new body is when it's holding you back. When your body is inhibiting your capability to get better pictures. You've got the glass, but you can't get the job done any longer because it's making it harder with the camera you have. Now, the side note is if you can't afford to move up to something else, then it's not time to get a new body. If you can't afford it, then you probably shouldn't be upgrading to it. But when your job is dependent upon getting that picture and you're being held back from the body that you have and you get paid to do your job, you shoot weddings, people are trusting you with their wedding day, that's when it's time to get a new body. When it's holding you back, when you have all the lenses, when you can afford it, and when you know that you're capable of using a better body. So that's really what I look for when it comes to getting a new body is something along those lines. And for me, when it comes to getting a new body, it's kind of like when they announced that new one. And I remember when the D3S came out, I was like, I can't see, well, the D3 came out, I was like, I can't see ever using a new body. And you know they're always coming up with something better. Then the D3S came out, it was even better. I got that. And then the D4 was an easy switch for me because I needed the video to make you guys videos that are longer than 5 minutes and just better quality videos and really cool shots. And anyway, that's just for me. So when's it time to get a new body? When it's holding you back, you can afford it, you've got the glass, and your job depends on it. So there you go, Justin. Hope that helps you out. We got Ronnie Lafayette, or if he's French, it's Ronnie Lafayette. But I'm taking it as Lafayette. Laifer. Lafayette. Lafer. Ah, shit. What is it? Lafer? Lafer? Lafayette? Lafayette? All right, enough with that. Mirrorless versus DSLR. This was one of the things I was going to write down to talk about. Is using mirrorless a step away from the genuine / traditional / purest DSLR experience? Would you shoot mirrorless? Question. What do you think of Sony Nex 7? It has DSLR controls and a feature such as digital optical viewfinder. Digital optical viewfinder. That's funny. How do you put digital and optical together? Because it's not. Sipping water, guys. Sipping water because I got to maintain my voice. Mirrorless versus DSLR. As a pro, I would not use a mirrorless camera on a gig. That's me. You know, I know that Zach Arias goes around and he uses his X Pro 1 and his X100 on gigs. That's because he feels comfortable with it. I don't feel comfortable with a mirrorless camera personally. If my life depended on it, could I get the job done? Abso-positively. Abso-positively, yes, I could do it. Any camera you put in my hands, I'm going to use it to its full extent. Would I buy one right now? No. You know, Nikon's got the Nikon 1 system. I think it sucks. Sony's got the Nex 7. I think it's one of the best ones on the market. Sony makes great sensors. It's a cool camera. But if you're going to buy something with interchangeable lenses, something with that size still, just invest in your DSLR. That's my opinion. If you can afford everything, then buy whatever the hell you want. But if I had my choice between a mirrorless or a DSLR, I'm going to go with the DSLR. And a lot of people ask, well, I just want a walk-around camera and an everyday camera. I don't know, use your cell phone, you know? I want to invest my money in where my DSLR is. I don't want to have a DSLR, you know, a D4, and then have to choose between. I had an X100 for like a week, and I couldn't do it. I didn't like the camera. If I'm going to shoot pictures with a fixed focal length lens, I might as well use a D3. I mean, my D4. That's just my opinion. I want to carry that around all the time. I don't want that little camera. So mirrorless, you got there's a lot of talk, and I think it's died down a lot of the talk about, the third generation cameras or whatever they called it. But really, at the photo shows, it's DSLRs and a lot of micro four thirds, and then there's minis, and then there's the Canon's got theirs, and Nikon has Nikon 1. Let me read this again. Mirrorless is using mirrorless a step away from. Is it a step away from the genuine, traditional, purist DSLR experience? Well, purist these days, I don't even think plays into the sense, because if you were a purist photographer, you'd go back to wet plates and day one of shooting, which is daguerreotypes and all that stuff. So I kind of don't buy into the purist mentality, because none of us are purists. Because if we were purist photographers, we'd go literally all the way back to the beginning, and that makes you the most pure. Excuse me, I'm going to spit again. Yeah, that's what happens when you're done being sick. But there's a fighter jet flying by outside, everybody. Well, anyway, is it the genuine traditional? No, it's not the same. You do have your settings. There's different. It's a different ball game. Most of them don't have a viewfinder, and the digital viewfinders, they're pretty cool, but they do lag a little bit. They're getting better. The hybrid viewfinder on the X Pro 1 and the X100 is really unique and really intuitive. I love the fact that I've got certain things in the viewfinder that I want to see, and I still have the optical viewfinder there, which helps me out a lot. So we're going to move on from that, but if you're trying to make a decision between both, if you're looking to get, I'm a DSLR fan all the way. I can't see going with mirrorless right now. Personally, the Sonys are really cool. I'd love to try it, but something in that size, if I'm going to carry around a bag, I'm carrying around my Hebrew Trinity and my D4. Now we've got a question from Christopher Pesquith. I'd like to hear your opinion on giving clients high-res digital files versus charging for prints and possibly low-res files, mainly concerned with weddings and portraits. Thanks. So, weddings. Here's a fact. Not actually a fact, but here's a fact that I think is kind of true. If somebody's buying a wedding album from you and they sign on to do a wedding album, it's going to take a year to get that thing done. I haven't gotten a wedding album done in like 2 months period of time for either I haven't made the album, or when you deliver it within 2 months, the digital files, they take forever to make a decision, or the clients take forever to get back to you. They take a year, and then they come out of nowhere. It's like, hey, we're ready for our album. And you're like, yay, you're ready for your album a year later. One of the easiest things to do when it comes to weddings is just shoot and deliver. Shoot and deliver. Man, does that make everything easy. Does it make it easy when you go to a wedding, you shoot it, you process it, you edit your files, you give them 400, 500, 600 files on a disc, and you're done with it. You made your $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, and you're happy with it. I mean, I'm happy with it, with the $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. Wedding albums, you have to weigh the profit versus the reward. The reward versus the time involved. Is it worth taking an extra, literally spending 24 work hours at least to make the album? You've got to spend 12 hours or so producing the layout. You've got to spend time going back and forth, emailing and talking with the client. You have to mail out, you have to get your prints done digitally. You have to check every print that comes in. If there's a mistake, you have to send it back and have them redo it. You've got to send it out to the binder to have them bind a quality album. So there's a lot of extra work that goes into it, and you have to ask, is it worth that extra $800 to $1,000, or are you better off spending your time booking more weddings, shooting them, and delivering them? So here's my answer. If you can work deals out where you deliver people high-res files and you're done, by all means, take it. Then there's the other side of the coin where people don't want to give the high-res. They only want to give rights to a certain amount of images. Now, some people can make a ton of money with rights. The big pros, they do this. They don't deliver any high-res. They give 1, 2, 3 files, and if they'd like to purchase more, then the people are spending another $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 to get the rights to use those images for a year. There's different schools of thoughts here. I am all about good pay, less back-end work that's needed, the better off you are. If you could deliver the files and be done with the client, especially for weddings, You're saving yourself a lot of aggravation and time. Let them go ahead and try to make the album that they want to make. Offer prints, you can offer them. Do people ever go and make them anymore from you? Not really, because they can order them online. So I don't think you can really offer prints and give them files. I think you can offer prints and not give them files. That's an old school way of doing it, when wedding photographers would charge you like $80 to $100 for an 8x10 because they had your negatives and they didn't give them to you. But I like giving the high-res files. It gets me done with a certain job, especially when I'm doing a corporate event. Am I ever going to use those images again? No, but it sounds good when I say, look, I'm going to give you all the files, high-res. I'll even make them low-res for you too for online use, so it's ready to go. I made it easy on the client. I deliver them the disc, or they download it off my FTP server. So I'd like to hear your opinion on giving clients high-res digital files. Yep. I give them the high-res files. I make it as easy as possible on me. Do my job. What I am best at is shooting. I don't want to deal with a lot of the back-end BS. I get it done. I give them their files. I'm paid. We're good to go. Makes it easy. So you think about it. So for a wedding, if I was charging hey, why are you buzzing, phone? If I was charging $4,000 to shoot a wedding, and I had a second shooter, say Richie's coming with me, and I'm paying Richie a good amount of money. I pay him to shoot, whatever, he's worth it. So that takes from your bottom line a little bit. And if you were to do a wedding album, you'd charge about $1,000 to $1,250. Some people may charge $1,500. You start making more money if they want extra books. And when they get extra albums, I'm like, look, if you want to order the same album, I'll charge you $800 instead of $1,000. I'll charge you $750. You want two of them? I'll charge you $700 each. Anytime you can add cash, it sounds good. So if you had $4,000 for just shooting and delivering, you're going to profit a good amount of money. You have to weigh, is it worth the extra work? You could outsource somebody to make your albums and pay them like $300-$400 to do that, and then pocket the rest. They'll deal with the clients and things like that, or if you're selling albums. I still like any money you can add over it. It's just that the time involved, you have to worry, is it worth it? But if you're at $4,000 and you add another $1,400 or $1,250 to the bottom line, that's a good amount of money. That's added money to your pocket that you didn't expect. That's good. If you add that 10 times a year, you're adding another $10,000 to $15,000 to your bottom line. It could be worth your time. So I don't know where I was going with that, but that's where I'm going with that. How many more questions? I think there's 3 here, so let's go through these. Anthony Pena. Hello. I'm getting a Nikon D7000 in the next month, but I want to know what to get next. I just have 2 lenses, the kit lens and 42.8, and I don't have a flash, and I want to get pro, but I need to build up some of my gear first. All right, so this mentality needs to kind of go away. You need to learn your camera first before you start running out to buy gear. You can buy all the greatest gear in the world, but if you don't know what you're doing with it, if you don't know how to get your composition, this is how we started off today. If you don't have the mentality down, then all the gear in the world isn't going to help you out. My answer to you is don't buy anything. Don't buy anything else. You've got the kit lenses, you got a 42.8. Go shoot. Learn the hell out of what you got, and when it's holding you back from getting the job done and you know it's inhibiting your success as a photographer, that's when it's time to go and invest in better lenses. But to start off right away with, I'm getting a new Nikon D7 in the next month, already just next month, I mean, you haven't even gotten the camera, and I have 2 lenses, the kit lens, so only the kit lens, 18 to 55, and a 40, well, it depends on the kit, but it's probably an 18 to 105 or an 18 to 55, and a 42.8, and I don't have a flash. Okay, you don't have a flash. You don't need a flash. You want to go pro. Okay, you want to go pro, but I need to build up some of my gear first. No, you don't need to build your gear. You need to build what's in your mind, and those listening at home, I'm pointing to my forehead. I'm actually hitting myself with my index finger on the forehead because you need to learn what's in your mind first. You need to go down that path where you understand photography before you start worrying about gear. Done, signed, sealed, delivered. I'm not going to rant on that one any longer. Tony Wayman, what kind of shampoo do you use and how many bottles a month? Tony, good question. The answer is Pantene Pro V, which every girl out there just went, worst shampoo ever. But I've been using it for 5 years. I use it now with 80% more volume. I don't know. I buy an 80 fluent ounce one at BJ's Wholesale, and I literally have the same one for, I don't know, a year, I mean, I've had the same bottle. I had the same bottle since I moved into my loft, and now I'm back home for 2 months, and it still has shampoo in it. So I don't really go through any bottles a month. I literally buy one bottle and go with it. But I am open to recommendation, ladies and men's who know what they're doing with their hair. Maybe I should use a different hair product. But I haven't, so I'm going to stick with this. Hope DeLuca. Last question I have here. Can you recommend a good tripod? I just jumped to shooting on the 5D Mark III L series lenses, but need a nicer tripod. My old one is probably worth only $20. Here's a tripod thing, guys. And we'll close it off in the next 10 minutes with the tripods. A good tripod is going to last you 10, 15, 20 years. I've had my tripod, my pro tripod for were we going on 5 or 6 years, and I cannot see getting rid of this thing anytime soon. It is a Manfrotto 055 MF4. They no longer make it. The reason I bought it, it's carbon fiber. It was light. I didn't like tripods, but I needed to get a job done where I was shooting interiors, so I bought it. I was working at Allen's at the time, so I got employee purchase, which was an amazing savings. Instead of spending $600, I spent like $400, but that was that. So now I've been using a lot of the Vanguard tripods, and this isn't a sales pitch for Vanguard. I do use their tripods. They are an advertiser on the website, and they are giving me stuff to give away to you guys coming up. But I've noticed at the photo shows, there's a lot of tripods out there now. There's a lot of bells and whistles and carbon fibers, and they're telling you that all carbon fibers are the same, and I don't think it is. But Vanguard makes a thing called a 264, I think it's a 263 AT. There's different monikers at the end, but it's a 263, a Vanguard 263. It's an aluminum tripod. You put any type of ball head, grip head. I have a pistol grip on top. They sell it as a package at Allen's for under $300. I think you're in the $265 range for a tripod. If you want to get into the carbon fiber, the better ones, you're going to spend around $440 for a package. But if you spend this once, you buy good camera bodies, you buy good lenses, you know that they're going to last a long time. If you buy a good tripod, you do it once. Don't spend $140 on one of those slick pieces of shit plastic tripods that's going to fall apart and it's got a crank on it. I don't know any pro tripods that have a crank on it. God, why do they do that? But why spend $140 on a piece of crap that's going to break to turn around to spend $300 on something good? For under $300 to get a quality tripod that you're going to take with you everywhere you travel, because it's easy to travel with. Carbon fiber weighs less, but it's more expensive. If my recommendation for for Hope, if you have all this good gear, which you already have, if you can spend the money on a good tripod, whether it's Vanguard, whether it's Gitzo, which is the top of the line, Manfrotto, three-legged thing, you name it, there's a million tripod companies out there. I'm recommending the 263 AT, or I'm recommending the I don't even know what is it, a 284 that Vanguard makes, which is the carbon fiber. So there's all different models, but I found that they're sturdy, they work well. Allen's has them. So check out allenscamera.com or give them a call and ask them about their Vanguard deal. I know they have a good deal on the 263 AT, but whatever you buy, whichever tripod it is, buy something quality. Make sure you like the plate that's on the top. Make sure you have an extra plate in your bag just in case you lose one. Here's a recommendation. When traveling, take the camera plate off the tripod, especially if your bag is exposed, not because somebody may steal it, but because it may get hooked on something and you may lose it, and when you go to shoot, you don't have it. Or put it on the camera bottom so that you don't have to worry about anything, so you don't have to worry about where it is. There's times I've taken it off, and I did this recently, and I put it in my bag, and I looked on my camera, and I looked at the tripod, I'm like, where did I put my plate? So don't forget it. I put it in a zip compartment of my think tank airport security, and I couldn't find it. So for me, keep it on the camera. That way you know where it's at, and when you go to use it, you've got it. So, quality work. Hey, I enjoyed this. I hope you guys enjoyed me flying solo and me yakking and yapping and talking and all this and all that good stuff. I really enjoyed these questions. What I loved about the questions is there wasn't a lot of what should I buy. It wasn't a lot of, I got this and I should buy this. It was a lot of mentality stuff, which I really appreciate when you guys do that, because that's what this is all about. Like I said at the very beginning, and you bring it full circle, is when you know what you're doing with anything, You know how to drive a car. You get better the older you get, except for when you hit that certain age, and then our parents, and we worry about them driving, and they don't see as well. My grandfather's 92, and he's giving up his license finally because he's going to pay somebody to drive him around in Fort Lauderdale. He's going to have his own chauffeur guy, which is perfect. But he knows that it's time to give up the wheel because he has trouble seeing, especially at night. He can't drive at night, and that sucks. That's a whole nother question to get into, is senior living, and I know it's not photography, but when I was in Florida visiting my grandfather, I drove, was it the 3 ladies? Or it was 4 people. It was my grandfather and 3 ladies. I picked them up in the car. We took his car because I rented a Mustang just to drive something faster and cooler. And but we took his Altima, and I took the 3 ladies and my grandfather. We went to breakfast. It was amazing. You've got a bunch. You had Lenore. Is that what's in? I forgot. She's awesome. Anyway, she's the librarian, and you just these people, just the camaraderie and getting together and going to lunch and breakfast and talking and arguing, and it's just awesome sitting with the seniors, and everybody should kind of do that and get involved there. And anyway, so back to cameras. I don't know what I was talking about. I like to, it comes back to knowing what you're doing with anything. Study it, become a student of getting better, look at the history, look at the future. Just understand the fundamentals first before you start going out and trying to buy the best things in the world. That's backwards sometimes, is buying the best and trying to figure out how to use it later. Buy the oldest. Buy a D70. You could probably find a D70 for like $50 on eBay or something. I love that D70. I almost said it takes tremendous pictures. It allows me to use it to take quality pictures, because remember, it's not about the camera all the time and how that thing takes great pictures and blah 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 blah. And I'm gonna stop right there. Thank you guys for listening to RAWtalk this week. I flew solo. If you'd like more of these, maybe I should do some of these every couple weeks or so. I got to see how this all works. Am I going to continue doing it week after week after week? If you guys made it this long, by the way, go to Twitter and make sure that you go, you type in @FroKnowsPhoto, use a hashtag RAWtalk, and type in flying solo. I just want to know that you guys listen this long. If you listen this long, type into Twitter, flying solo. I'll pick somebody to win a free FroKnowsPhoto video guide, the downloadable version. And if you guys didn't know, I did put out a DVD version. You can pick that up. It comes with a DVD that plays in a player. It comes with a digital file on a disc, also a dual layer DVD. So you can get both of those. You can still pick up the beginner guide for $67. The DVD's going for $97, signed and numbered and all that. But what was I talking about? Beginner guide. What was I talking about? Why is nobody here to remind me? So with RAWtalk, I want to do more interviews. I got to get to see more people in person. I like doing that more so than a Skype interview. It's not as real. I want to start filming them. I want to start bringing them to you guys like that. And I think that the interviews are great. So I'm going to keep pushing ahead with the RAWtalks, and I enjoy them. I hope you guys do. I hope you like this type of RAWtalk with the questions and answers. I think it went pretty well for flying solo and yakking for an hour here. So guys, thank you very much for listening to this week's FroKnowsPhoto RAWtalk. Be sure to go to FroKnowsPhoto.com/podcast to check out past episodes. Definitely subscribe on iTunes if you can. You get it on your iOS devices. You can get it on your Android devices, and on Stitcher. I think I was approved for Stitcher, so go there and check it out. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.